Welcome. Welcome to our Bible study. It's good to be here with you to learn a little bit about Jesus. We're poking our way through the Gospel of Mark, and we're in chapter 5 today, and Jesus is going to do a great miracle. Actually, a pretty important miracle, but we will get to that. So let me ask you a question. Do you consider yourself more outgoing or shy? So, I love a party. I used to like to dance, and I used to like to go out and talk to people. And it's probably hard for you to believe this, but I'm a pretty shy guy. Oh, I can get on camera and do these kinds of things, or I can do a message live and stuff like that. But I'm really a pretty shy, pretty introverted person when I'm outside of you all. And the reason I even bring this up is the woman that Jesus is going to heal today was a pretty shy person and didn't want to have a lot of commotion going on around her. Let me ask you this. How do you feel when you are crowded in an elevator or a bus? You're all crowded in. Do you like to be crowded in? Does that bother you? I can tell you it bothers me. And I moved out of New York City after college for that very reason. I didn't like being on the Staten Island ferry where there was so many people. Everybody's crowded in on you, or on the subway where there was crowded in. And I always have tried to live at least in a little bit of a rural area, or at least the suburb, because I don't like being crowded. And we're going to find out today that Jesus is crowded in by all these people that are following him. Scores and scores and thousands of people, and they're all crowding in on Jesus. And someone is going to touch Jesus. And nobody's going to say, well, we can't tell who it is. There's too many people crowding in on him. Well, here's something maybe you can identify with. Have you ever been sick for a long time when your doctors could not cure you? You say, well, yeah, that's the way it is right now. The doctors are relieving my symptoms. Well, they're not able to cure me, but I'm able to get on, but no, they're not able to cure me. Yeah. Well, today we're going to find that's exactly the way it was with this woman. She was sick for 12 years, and although all the doctors tried to heal her, nobody was successful. And in fact, she was getting worse and worse. Well, here's the background. Jesus has just returned from his trip across the lake. Remember, he had gone over to the west side of the Sea of Galilee, and he had returned back to Capernaum, which is on the east side of the Sea of Galilee. While he was on the trip, on his way over, he calmed that storm. He just said, hush, be still. And then while he was over there, a demonic man met him with a legion of demons in him, and Jesus cast them out into the pigs, and you remember the story. Well, he's gotten back from that trip, and let's pick up the story from there. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, from the west side to the east side, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. He was probably teaching them by the lake. That's what Jesus would do. And a large crowd, 1,000, 2,000, I don't know, a large crowd. And they were with Jesus by the lake. So they were on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, like I said, in Capernaum, and many people were there. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, my little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live. So Jesus went with him. Now, we're going to pick up this story of what happens between Jairus and his daughter and Jesus in our next class, because the next verses have a miracle that gets kind of interjected into the middle of the miracle when Jesus is going to raise Lazarus from the dead. But we're going to do that miracle. We don't have time to also do Jesus raising Jairus' daughter from the dead. So we're going to do this interlude. We'll pick up with Jairus next class. And a large crowd followed and pressed around him. So as he was walking to Jairus' house, a large crowd is pressing around him. Wow, this is great. We're going to see a miracle. We all want to see a miracle. We're going to go see a miracle. So there's a great number of people are following Jesus as he walks. And verse 25, a woman was there in the crowd who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. So this woman, the woman had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had a period for 12 years. Now, this bleeding made her ceremonially unclean. And she was desperate. She was in a desperate situation. You see, because of this, touching her made another unclean. Anyone that touched her, anyone that she touched, they became unclean. And anyone that became unclean through her they'd have to bathe, and they'd have to wash their clothes and go through a bunch of rituals to become ceremonially clean again. Furthermore, the bed that she slept was unclean. And every day, because of this bleeding, she would have to wash it with water in order to make it clean and have it not defile people. She couldn't go to worship. When she was unclean, she could not go to Jerusalem and participate in worship. Furthermore, she was shut off from her friends, her family, and society. She couldn't touch anybody. Can you imagine having your mom not be able to be touched or not be able to touch her kids? This was a big deal. This is a really big deal. And she should not be in a crowd. Although she was there, she probably should not have been in that crowd because she would have made other people in the crowd unclean. And she certainly should not touch Jesus. We're going to see that what she's going to do is touch Jesus' cloak. Not going to actually touch him, but touch his cloak, touch his coat. And it was like being a leper. Now, she didn't have to yell, unclean, unclean, but it was like being a leper. Socially removed from anything. She couldn't have a job. And you want to read about this, you can read about this in Leviticus chapter 15. 5:26. She, the woman, had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors, and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. See, the doctors drained her bank account. Do you feel that way sometimes? Well, the doctors aren't healing me, and all they're doing is they're making money on me, but they're not making me better. And yet these doctors weren't able to hear it. Now, some of them were probably charlatans. Some of them probably were there to take her money. Others genuinely wanted to heal her, but they were unable. Now, let's think about this poor woman. What was her worst problem? What do you think her worst problem was? You think it was, You think it was her physical suffering? Well, yeah, maybe it was her physical suffering. It was, yucky all the time and physical. Or maybe it was because she was financially drained. I don't know. Maybe she felt that was the worst thing. I mean, she was going to have to beg, I guess, for money. I don't know how she would make money. Maybe her worst problem was that she was a social outcast. Oh, maybe she was a social outcast. Maybe that was her biggest problem. Maybe she was a socialite. Maybe she loved to be with people, and all of a sudden she can't be with people anymore. Well, for 12 years. Maybe it was being religiously impure, not being able to go to worship, not being able to go to synagogue, not being able to associate with other Jewish people because she was unclean. Or maybe it was guilt with low self-esteem. She's probably thinking, I must have done something as a child, or I must have done something to warrant this plague that has come upon me, this bleeding that has come upon me. And so she had some significant problems. Physical suffering, financial issues, social outcast, religiously impure, low self-esteem. This woman had some real problems. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. What do you think she had heard about Jesus? Well, she certainly heard that he healed many people. Everybody heard about Jesus' healings. Yeah, this guy Jesus is going around healing everybody. She probably also heard that he might be the Messiah. People say, well, maybe this is the one we've been waiting for such a long time. Or maybe she heard that he claimed to be God's son. But she certainly had heard these things about Jesus. People were, by this time, everybody knew about Jesus. They may not have met him, but everybody knew about him, especially his healings. Because she thought, she touched him because if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. You see, the woman, without any doubt, knew and believed that Jesus could heal her, that he had the power. So what do you think? Do you think that she thought he was the Messiah and God's son? Maybe. I don't know. She probably heard those stories. Maybe she had already believed that he was the Messiah, already believed that he was God's son. Possibly. And the other thing that drove her is she wanted a way to be healed in secret. She really didn't want a lot of public display, going out and saying, oh, I've had this bleeding, and all the people say, oh, you're unclean, get away from me, and all the ridicule, you must be a very sinful person for have bleeding for 12 years, get away from me. And she didn't want to have to go through that abuse. And she wanted to do it as secretly as possible. Now, what we believe that she touched was one of Jesus' tassels. You see, Jews had 4 tassels on their garments. And these were blue, ornate, twisted threads. So you can imagine these twisted threads coming down. Sometimes you might have seen them at Orthodox Jews, maybe on their hats. But they have these ornate tassels. And they showed that they were Jews. Anybody could say, oh, you're a Jew because you have a tassel. You have these blue tassels. And all the Jews wore them. They all wore them, including Jesus. Jesus was a Jew. It reminded them that they belonged to God, that they were one of God's people. Furthermore, these tassels were a reminder of God's rules, a reminder that they had to follow God's commandments. And that was the real purpose. They'd see this tassel, oh, I have to follow the commandments because I belong to God. And there was on the top of each shirt corner. So there'd be one over here, one here, and one in the back, in between the shoulder blades. What did the woman touch? Well, she went behind Jesus. She touched this tassel, probably. It doesn't say that, but that's probably what she did. And if you want to read about tassels, you can read about them in Numbers 15 and Deuteronomy 22. But I'm going to leave that as an exercise to the student. So, what gave this woman the courage to sneak up behind Jesus and touch the back of his robe, maybe the tassel? Well, she had nothing to lose. What did she have to lose? I mean, she was miserable. It was 12 years of this garbage. She was desperate. I want to get back into society. I want to be able to be with my family again. I'm desperate. I want to work. She really believed Jesus could heal her, and that gave her courage. Jesus healed other people, so it gave her incentive, gave her courage. And she really thought, she said, I can go stealthily. I can go getting back at Jesus. He'll never know, and I'll touch him. So, if you were that woman, what obstacles, you'd have to have a plan. What obstacles would you face? Well, you have to overcome your fear. Oh man, this guy's a great man. This guy, Jesus, is a great man. I'm going to go up and sneak up on him and get behind him. I'm a little bit nervous about this. I'm a little bit afraid. Or maybe she had to overcome that the fear that Jesus couldn't help. Maybe he really didn't do all these things. Maybe they're just stories. So she had to overcome that. She had to believe that she was going to go through all this trouble that at least possibly Jesus would heal her. Well, she had to find Jesus. If you're going to touch Jesus, you got to find him. And where would he be? How would you know where he would be? Well, you heard stories. Maybe you heard the story that he went to the seashore all the time. So he went and he saw a crowd, and that's how you found him. I don't know how she found him, but she did have to find him. And then she'd have to get to Jesus through the crowd. I mean, this is a hard thing. She probably was up there and skirted around once, excuse me, pushed her way in here and snuck her way in here because there were thousands of people around Jesus. So she had to get all the way up to him close enough so she could reach out and touch him. And there probably was a little thought in her mind about she didn't want to make the crowd unclean. This wasn't a bad lady. She didn't want to hurt anybody. She always wanted to do was to stop the stupid bleeding so she can get on with her life. Immediately, her bleeding stopped. She touched the back of Jesus' cloak. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. Immediately, her blood stopped, and she was freed from her suffering. Be an interesting question. How do you think she knew? She just knew. She just knew. It came upon her. Oh, I guess. I'm healed. I'm healed. I know I'm healed. She knew she was healed. She just knew it. 5:30. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" Who was it? Who was it? Who was it? Show yourself. Who was it that touched me? Well, Jesus asked, "Who touched my clothes?" And here's an interesting question. This is one for you to ponder when you can't sleep tonight. Do you think Jesus didn't know who touched him? He didn't say he didn't know. He's asking who touched me. But do you think that did Jesus know who touched him? Well, some of you are going to say, yes, Jesus knows everything. He's God, right? He knows everything. Yeah? That's kind of what I think. So you say, no. In Jesus' humanity, he didn't know. Jesus is fully God and fully man. And in this case, he was in his humanity, he didn't know who touched him. Well, maybe. Or maybe he said yes, but he wanted her to present herself to him. He wanted to be able to talk to him. He wanted her to be in front of him so they can have a conversation. Maybe that's what he wanted. Or maybe you say yes. He wanted everybody's attention. Maybe that's what he was doing. Saying, who touched me? Who touched me? Uh-oh, something's going on, everybody's saying. We better watch really closely. We better listen really closely about what's going to happen. Mark 5:31. This is how his disciples respond. They said, "You see the people crowding against you?" He said, "Jesus, you see the people crowding against you?" His disciples asked us, "And yet you can ask, who touched me?" Look at all these people. Lots of people have been touching you. They've been touching you all day. I don't even know how we sort out the one you want from all the others that touched you because there's so many people. But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. He looked around. He looked around. Who is it? Who is it? Who's the one? Who's the one? Jesus kept looking around to see who touched him. So, why did Jesus have to know who touched him? Why did he have to know? Why? Well, he wanted the crowd to know about the miracle. I think that's part of it. Jesus just doesn't do miracles for the sake of doing miracles, party tricks and stuff like that. He does his miracles for a purpose. In this case, not only to heal this woman and to make her be able to get back into society, but to show his power to the people that are around it so that they will see, they will listen to his words, believe, and become Christians and go to heaven. So he wanted the crowd to know that he did this miracle. Maybe he wanted to point out the fact, look at this woman's faith. Look at all that she did to come to me. And that faith resulted in a good thing. You guys have faith too. You all should have faith. And good things will happen to you too. Or maybe he had to have this conversation. He needed to know so he could let her know that she'd received God's peace. And we're going to find that's what Jesus is going to do. He's going to say, go in peace. You have God's peace. Or maybe it was to receive social healing. Maybe he wanted to make sure that she understood she was healed and that she could go and resume a life that she had lost for the last 12 years. You can start touching your kids again, touching your husband again, and so forth. Going to Jerusalem. You're going to be able to go to Jerusalem and worship. Mark 5:33. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, she was healed, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. You know, people keep coming to Jesus in these stories and falling at his feet. In the last study, the man with the legion of demons in him came over and fell at Jesus' feet at the beginning of today's study. Jairus has come, falls at Jesus' feet. Here's this lady, the third one. So people are all the time coming and falling at Jesus' feet. And Jesus accepts that. And, maybe it's time for each of us to fall at Jesus' feet a little bit. Think about that and what that means tonight when you can't sleep. And the woman knew that she was healed. She said that before, but she knew she was healed. But why was the woman trembling? Why was she so afraid? Well, she had been caught. I mean, she knew she was sneaking around, and she knew that she had been caught. And she didn't care about being caught, but she was afraid. She was afraid. She would trade being caught for being healed, of course, any day. But she had been caught. Maybe she knew she was in the presence of God. She said, oh, these stories about Jesus, he really is God's son. And wow, if I'm in the presence of God, there's a whole lot of fear going on. Maybe she was afraid of Jesus' power. All those doctors couldn't do anything for me for all those years. And Jesus did it in just a millisecond. Wow, this man has such power. I'm a little bit afraid of that power. Or maybe she was afraid he would take the healing back. So please, Jesus, don't take it back. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. He, Jesus, said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace, be free from your suffering. Wouldn't it be great if all of a sudden Jesus is here and he looks at you and he says, daughter, or he looks at you and he says, son? Yeah, that'd be great. So he says, daughter, your faith has healed you. Your faith has healed you. I want you to notice, this woman was healed because of her faith, not because of touching. The touching resulted from her faith. The touching flowed out of her faith, but it was the faith that healed her. It's just like us being saved. Our faith, our belief in Jesus saves us, and that faith in Jesus results in our obedience and our doing actions and our good works. Our good works don't save us. Our faith in Jesus saves us, and then out of that faith flows our actions. All right. So how did the woman show her faith? What did she do? First of all, she believed in her heart of hearts that Jesus could heal her. And she overcame her fear. Her faith overcame her fear. And that's another thing for you to think about tonight. Faith overcomes fear. She came to Jesus. She had to take the steps. She acted on her faith and came to Jesus. She pushed past the crowd and she touched Jesus' garment, or his tassel, his garment. And so these are actions that flowed out of her faith. So can you identify with this woman? Huh? This woman maybe remind you of yourself a little bit? I bet you some of you are going to say, yeah. Say, yeah, her continuing illness, I got a continuing illness. We are similar in that. Struggling finance. This woman was struggling with her finances because she gave all she had to the doctors. I gave all I had to the doctors too. I'm struggling with my finances. Or maybe like that woman, you were feeling alone. The woman was feeling alone because she was ostracized from society. Now you're in a home, and maybe you're a little bit ostracized from society too. And or maybe you're feeling like she felt spiritually impure. You felt spiritually impure. Or maybe like her, you're just a little bit shy to asking. Let me tell you. Don't be shy to asking Jesus. Jesus wants you to ask him. Jesus wants to say, let me tell you what happened to me today. Let me tell you what my problems are. And if there's a sin, if you're feeling spiritually impure, confess it to the Father. Say, Father, I'm sorry, whatever, and he will forgive you. You have direct access to the Father. All you need to do is say, I'm sorry. And you will be spiritually pure again. You will no longer be separated from God. You can get close to God. And you don't have to feel alone. Jesus will be your friend. Help Jesus to be your friend. And speaking of which, if you have the opportunity, be a friend to somebody else, especially if somebody else is in your same situation. It's a great work that you can do. And maybe you have struggling finances. Take them to Jesus. Jesus may not give you $1 million, but he will give you comfort. And if you have a continued illness, take it to Jesus. He may not heal you, but he'll give you the strength to get through to that time when you will be completely healed. All right, here's my summary. Jesus healed a woman, and he healed her in two things. He healed her physically, but he also socially restored her. There's two big deals. He not only healed her, but he made it so that she could get back into society, back to her family, back to her friends, back to worship. And the woman had great faith and courage. Would you have had the courage to be able to get through that crowd, to go up and sneak behind Jesus and touch him? Would you have the courage to do that? The stamina, the will? This woman had great faith and great courage. A good example. And here's my recommendation. Take your problems to Jesus. Take your problems to Jesus. He wants to hear about your problems. He'll listen. I want to tell you. If you believe in Jesus, I want to encourage you. If you believe in Jesus, you believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God who was crucified, died and rose again from the dead. You're sorry for the bad things you've done. If you're a Christian, if you believe in Jesus, you will be made completely 100% whole again. You will receive a resurrected body, a perfect body, one that you'll have forever, one that'll never wear out, never have a pain, never get sick, never die. And furthermore, you will spend eternity with Jesus and the Father in heaven. That's the great promise of Christianity. That's what it's all about. Now, in this life we may have troubles, but it's only for a short time. Eternity in heaven waits you if you believe in Jesus and that resurrected body. Well, if you've been watching the videos, you know what I want you to do. I want you to say 3 prayers every day. They're short prayers. Maybe say it 3 times a day, 5 times a day. These are important prayers. Say them every day. The first prayer is that everyone in your facility, everyone in your residence, whether it's a home residence or it's a nursing home or a group home, whatever it is, pray that everyone there, every resident, every staff, every person comes in, that they would hear about Jesus, believe, and go to heaven. Salvation for them. If you're home, the people that come into your house, all your family, all your friends, everybody that comes in, pray that they would be saved. Second of all, please pray every day for an end to racism in the United States. Tell God, please, God, start in your church. Racism is evil. It's horrific. It has no place in the church, has no place in our great country. Pray against racism every day. And finally, pray every day for protection from the coronavirus. It's still out there. It is still out there. And still making people sick. In one of the facilities that I'm familiar with, in fact, they had 3 cases a week or so ago. So it's still out there. And pray against the coronavirus every day, at least once. And now, there's only one thing left to say. Say it with me. Aloha. See you there. God bless you all. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.